The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you all for joining us on our business transformation webcast today. We will be discussing PTC Creo Flexible Modeling Extension. My name is Matt Tognerelli. I will be the moderator, and Ben Givehand will be our presenter for today's webcast. We'll begin with a brief BWI intro, who we are, how we help manufacturers with solutions across product lifecycle. For those who are new to our webcast series, then we'll go right into a presentation around PTC Creo Flexible Modeling Extension, along with a live demo. If you have any questions following this broadcast, please feel free to contact me. Barry-Wehmiller International is a global engineering and enterprise consulting division of Barry-Wehmiller, a U.S.-based manufacturing leader with over 8,000 team members and operations worldwide, going on 130 years of business and approaching $2 billion in annual revenue. Our division provides total solutions across the product lifecycle, helping manufacturing leaders drive more business and engineering value. Our customers see BWI as their total solutions partner for enterprise engineering and technology services. BWI provides manufacturers end-to-end solutions across the product lifecycle, providing enterprise systems, consulting, and engineering services such as PLM, ALM, ERP, and CRM, along with engineering design and development services, including value engineering, control engineering, and more, all the way to offering the entire PTC product suite and PLM implementations and consulting. We help manufacturers implement these solutions both as a standalone or as an integrated process. Barry-Wehmiller has a rich manufacturing legacy tracing back to 1885, servicing all sizes of businesses ranging from small to mid-sized Fortune 1000 manufacturers. And now I will hand it over to Ben and give him control and let him do the presentation on PTC Creo Flexible Modeling Extension.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Let me change over here to you. And it should be all yours, Ben.
All right, let me make sure that gets up. I can kind of see it in the GoToMeeting interface. So there we go. All right.
Yep, I got you.
Matt, at any point in time, very good. If at any point in time I'm kind of talking in front of or behind picks and clicks, just let me know. That could be a GoToMeeting thing, but we'll just kind of interrupt me as I go through this. Okay.
Will do.
All right. So, group, what we're going to cover today here is what is considered to be the flexible modeling tool that PTC offers. If you have been involved with some of our presentations, our webcast series in the past, we've kind of taken a break for probably the last, I don't know, maybe a year or something like that. But we still have a lot of those webcasts that are still up on YouTube, and obviously this one will go up at some point in time. We actually did this one at point in time before. I can't remember what version we did it in, maybe Creo 1, Creo 2, right around that time frame. So today we'll see it within the Creo 3, software. To be honest with you, you're not going to see much of a difference from a functionality standpoint, but you'll see some different models and how it handles some different things, and we'll talk concepts and how it works and how it can help you. Okay. So we'll start off here with just some simple slides. I'm not going to slide you to death. I'd actually rather so product, but I'm also going to show you the PTC website from a download software point of view, because a lot of times we get confused when we start talking about flexible modeling and direct modeling and co-create, because all that stuff is kind of related, and it just kind of gives us a good idea of separating softwares and what is what. Okay, so very simply, like you see here, the flexible modeling extension is actually an add-on, right? Now, it's an add-on for something that you have to purchase, but to be honest with you now, a lot of the base packages are actually coming along, or flexible modeling is actually coming along with it. But if for some reason you had some of the old packaging and you weren't interested in purchasing some of the new stuff, you actually can add this for a fairly cheap price, and I think it hovers right around about $1,500 at any given time. It is a floatable option, so you can throw it back and forth between one user to the next. If you find some some use for it. But essentially, from a structural standpoint of how the software is licensed and a costing perspective, hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea. Okay. Really, what we're talking about here is when we get into what is flexible modeling is the ability to create direct geometry edits on whether it is a Creo part or old Wildfire part or even IGES data, the ability to create direct modeling edits on geometry. Now, if you don't understand what that means, that's okay. We'll talk a little bit more here in just a second. Now, from here, I'm going to hop out of my my PowerPoint, and I do want to show you this and talk a little bit about this. Thought I had that open here. Well, this will only take me just a second to get back to it. But essentially, for those of you that know this story, and for a lot of the experienced users at some point in time, I'm sure you've seen this or heard about this. But a number of different years ago, essentially, PTC purchased a software called CoCreate. And from CoCreate, or I should say what CoCreate is it is a specific direct modeling software. So us as Creo users and Pro users, we use relationship building parametric softwares. CoCreate was a direct modeler, and in a simple definition of what a direct modeler is there's no history, there's no model tree, right? If I create a hole and relate it to the side, they're just dimensions, right? If I pull the block out, essentially the hole stays in the same spot. Now I can move along with, but it doesn't have all those relationships and all those ties that you would see from a direct modeler that everybody knows what they are. Okay, so when PTC purchased this CoCreate, they had two entirely different platforms. They had CoCreate and they had Pro Engineer at the time, and hence the term Creo kind of came involved because everything, as you know now, it has a Creo in front of it, right? Whether it's Creo Parametric or Creo Simulate or whatever it may be. But if you're looking at it from a standpoint, because all that can kind of be confusing, you really kind of look at this. If you look at the download portion of it, you'll see right here, all of the CoCreate, or what is considered to be Creo Elements Direct, is what is actually the old CoCreate software. So if I pick the modeling, you also see kind of a number difference. See how 16, 17, all the way up to 19, right? This is what is considered to be CoCreate, still out there, still available. PTC has plenty of customers still using that came over at some point in time. There's also what is called Creo Direct. After PTC bought CoCreate, they did kind of rework something to where you could actually do and create features within kind of a CoCreate type function, but it was kind of limited into its capabilities. That's still there. I don't remember if this is a purchasable option or not. I just don't remember off the top of my head. But it was released in one. Essentially, this is Creo 1, but it was the Creo Direct idea of it, and then getting back all the way now, obviously, to Creo 3, what we're using. And then everybody knows that we have Creo Parametric. So I just kind of wanted to show you this, kind of how this is broke down. Sometimes there's confusion onto what's CoCreate and what's Creo Direct and what's the parametric side of it. Okay. Now, from a standpoint of flexible modeling, this is kind of one of the things when PTC bought CoCreate that kind of derived into what you could or couldn't do specifically right from the Creo interface, right? So the idea here is that, like I said before, is that what flexible modeling gives you is the ability to create direct modeling edits, but from within the Creo interface. So what you'll see here is a little tab that says, and we'll get to this here in just a little bit, that says flexible modeling, and in that flexible modeling, I can go in and create those edits, kind of like what we'll see. Okay. Now, where does flexible modeling become a useful tool, right? Essentially, because not only do I have the ability to alter parametric data, again, Pro-E and also Creo data, but I also have the ability to alter data, or alter geometry, I should say, from IGES files, SolidWorks files, CATIA files, and whatever it may be. As all of us know, bringing in a SolidWorks file or bringing in an IGES file, fundamentally all of that stuff is just dumb geometry. So the ability to alter holes or alter rounds or those type of things become a very painful process, and that's what the flexible modeling extension helps you do. It helps you modify geometry. And again, not create geometry, but modify geometry, again, regardless of what type of data that it is. Okay? So where does this become, again, I said where to become useful again, but what can it aid you in doing, right? What else can it help streamline, for lack of a better word, okay? So a lot of us old school parametric guys are a little bit leery sometimes of the flexible modeling extension, right? But as we all know, editing geometry at a late stage, possibly in a design process, can be difficult to say the least. Okay, we've done all this engineering work on our part. We've created some type of relationship from one object to 15 other objects, and all I want to do is move that thing an inch one way. Okay, that can become hairy, especially if we're using relationships and all that other things that we can do. So that's really where the flexible modeling comes in at, is that it kind of allows us to bypass all of those parametrics, even though we've built the parametrics into the model itself. Now, some of us will think that's a great idea, and some of us will be a little skeptical of it. But if you have a fit for it, it becomes a very big time-saving functions that you can do that, again, help you get past something where you weren't necessarily anticipating at some point in time. All right, so I'll show some of this. Again, this is kind of more for the webcast, or you can kind of pause this and read this at some point in time. But we'll also talk about, for some of us, when we're doing some of our FEA work, we want to remove chamfers, we want to remove rounds. Again, whether that's a parametric or whether that's an IGES data, this is, again, one of the things that the flexible modeling extension allows us to do. Okay. So again, just kind of the back end of it here, and I think we're done after that. Yep. So, digital prototyping, how can you change things very quickly without necessarily having to deal with the parametrics, even though we might have some in there? Flexible modeling tool. The legacy data, again, IGES, SolidWorks parts, whatever it may be, how you change them, that's the flexible modeling extension, okay? So you see some of the, again, ideas and concepts, and again, told you I didn't want to bore you to death with slides, but let's go ahead and get right into the software, and you'll see what we're talking about and how this can help you out. All right, I'll bring this back up at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send something to my email, and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. All right. All right, so what I have here is a very typical assembly that if you've seen a lot of PTC demos, you've seen this before. It is the riding a lawnmower, and it is actually a fairly detailed assembly that I have here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open this part that you see down here. There it is. Okay. And what we're going to do is we want to make, and again, whether it's late stage design changes or whatever it may be, we're just going to kind of talk about how this works. Okay. But really what I have here is a very detailed, you can see, absolutely a Creo part, right? All the stuff that goes into it, a bunch of rounds and a whole bunch of things that go into it. And as we know, as we change objects in this software, depending on what you're changing at what stage can be kind of a headache for us, okay? So what you'll see up in the top is what is called the flexible modeling tool. And in the flexible modeling tool, you'll see essentially a bunch of functions in the way that kind of how this works. Now, into this, what I'm also going to do here is I want to do this because it kind of helps us understand from a standpoint of how things are selected and how it identifies objects when we're going to alter them, is that this, even though it's a very simple model, but it kind of gives us an idea of how things work, okay? Now, essentially, like we talked about before, right, again, this is another Creo model with all the relationships that you have in it, is that at some point in time, I might want to come in and just take this entire peg right here and just move it an inch this way. Well, not understanding what all the parametrics are and if it's tied to this or tied to this or tied to this object, I just want to push it, okay? So first of all, when you get in the flexible modeling tool, you pick the object that you want to move. Pretty simple. Well, how does it understand what to pick? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick this surface, and what you'll see is that essentially these guys right here start to light up and help identify things for you, okay? So what this does is it works off what is considered to be a boss or a cut idea, and then the ability to identify rounds and chamfers. So this is more of a boss. So what I'm going to say is I want to pick this guy, and it says, do you want the boss essentially in a simple standpoint or from the select surfaces, or do you want it kind of recognized a little bit more? So what I'll do is say I want the entire boss. Notice how it identifies that all the way down to the floor, okay? At the same token, we'll look at it from this standpoint. I'm going to go ahead and pick that surface right there. I'll say give me the entire boss, and notice how it recognizes all the geometry according to the boss. Now, let's say that we don't get all of it, okay? Let's say it can't recognize something because it's not perfect by any means, and I pick this guy. I still, at that point in time, can just hold the control button and continue to pick surfaces that I want to add in to some type of move or change that I'm going to make, okay? So it's not like it's limited to the selection process that you see up here. You just hold the control button or hold the shift button, or if that matter, I can hold the shift button and get all of it anyway. Well, I guess there was a hole at the bottom here. There we go. All right. There it is. And there it is. Okay. So you can still use the same concepts around selection process and still use the flexible modeling, the flexible modeling functions, right? But this selection of geometry becomes a big deal because, again, it doesn't always do the perfect job of what it selects, but you still can always use shift and control button to add in the surfaces or the geometry that you like to change, okay? So I wanted to start out with that to kind of show you how things change or how things are selected and how we go through the selection process in general. All right, let's go back to that part. All right, here we go. So let's go ahead and make a change, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead, pick that surface right there. Let's see what it recognizes, right? It recognizes that. You know what? I want to add in the other ones. So I'll go ahead, hold the control button, pick some more geometry, pick the two halves. Everybody knows there's always two halves of a round, right? Or circular objects. If you've been around Pro Engineer software, Creo software a long time, there it is. Notice on the back side, right? The back side, this is more of an injection molded part. It's not a shell. But at this point in time, I want to move this object around. Now, what you'll see here is at the bottom of the model tree, as soon as I actually do this, is that it's actually going to put in its own separate feature. So at this point in time, I'm going to go in and say, I want to move this object. I am creating a direct edit on geometry. I'm not altering the parametrics. I'm just creating some type of direct edit. So I'm going to hit the move button, and what it gives me, for those of you that have been using Creo, is just very similar, right? The little gyrosphere right there. And what I'm doing is just altering this object, in this case, by dragging it around. Okay, there it is. And not only can I do that, but I also can drag it up and notice how it extends the geometry for me. Okay, so I just made a very heavy change essentially to this object without going in and editing the definition of all the features and all the ties that you may have. So when I hit the button, what you'll see here is there's my change, and I know that's kind of a goofy change there, but that's okay. We want to kind of see how it works. But notice in the bottom of the model tree, what it puts is an actual move feature. Now this is no different than any move feature that you would expect. I can right click on it and suppress it. I can right click on it and delete it. I can use the undo button to put it back, or I can use the undo button to grab it, or the redo button, I should say, to put it back in. Okay, but the idea here again is that we are modifying geometry. Okay, modifying geometry that again is parametrically tied, but we're doing it with essentially direct geometry edits. Okay. Now, here's another little example of this. Okay. Now, in this case, if I were to come in, I'm going to pick this surface. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to pick the cuts. Right. It recognizes that as a cut. If I hit the move button, that's fine. Right. I can move it, and I can move it back and forth. But in this case, I don't want to move it. I just want to make it a little bit bigger. Well, that's an offset function. So here's an offset. It says, how far do you want to offset it? Again, I can type in a specific value, right? Or I can just kind of drag it around. There it is. You see the value that I'm putting in. See if we can take in the 0.1. There it is. And so I've offset that object now 0.1. Okay. Now again, could you have done that in your parametrics? Probably sure. But what if this was an IGES part, right? What if it was a step file that you could do? Now all of a sudden I have dimensional values that again that I can regulate and handle that way. Okay. So the concept of move, right? Well, actually, I'll do another move here in just a second based off of dimensional value. You can do that. It's not just drag and drag only. But you kind of get the idea of what we're doing here. We're not creating geometry. Really what we're doing is just modifying or creating direct edits on geometry that currently exists. Okay? So we can leave this guy alone right here. And let's kind of get into some of these other little things that you see right here. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I want to modify, I want to drag kind of our supporting fins around right here that you see right here. Again, you see it on the bottom, more of a injection molded part. Obviously not more, but it is an injection molded part. But I want to drag this peg, or excuse me, not the peg, but the the little rib feature maybe to the left a little bit, but I also want it to have an effect on this guy over here because right about the plane, right, all of this is symmetric. So there is the ability to go in and create what is called a symmetric object, right? So what I'll do here is I'm going to say mirror. I'm going to pick this guy, hold the control button, and pick this one right there. Oh, sorry. Where's my symmetry at? Oh, there it is. Sorry, guys. Not mirror. Symmetry. Excuse me. Symmetry. All right, so I'll go ahead and pick this guy, pick this guy. And what we're saying here is that those objects are symmetrical. Now, what it did and what it actually does, if you notice, see how when I go pick up my symmetry, see how it actually recognized and also put these other guys or these other rib features as also being the symmetric concept. So now, this time, when I come in and say, you know what, I want to create a move. Let's pick it first. There it is. I'll create that. There's my boss. I'm going to move it. But this time, under my, let's see, my options, there it is. I'm going to say I want to add in that symmetry right there. So notice how it recognizes the symmetry, and now, when I go in and drag this guy back and forth, you're going to go see that the other object moves also. So if I went in and selected these and moved, then this is going to be affected, this is going to be affected. Because again, what are we doing? We're really just kind of dragging this guy around. In this case, could we have typed in a value? Sure. But I'm dragging this guy around and then again expecting the result on the other objects. So the ability to create symmetry, now I don't have to guess at how far I move this one and then have to do it over here. I don't have to duplicate that work. I describe the symmetry and then I go from there. Okay. So there's my move. There is essentially, there it is. There's essentially what is considered to be the symmetry concept. Okay. Now, beyond the ability to modify objects, you also can do things like remove. Okay, and this becomes fairly powerful because you can do again a lot of different things with it. So in this case, I'll say I want to pick this guy. We're going to pick all of the boss. There it is. Again, it recognizes the entire logo, and I'm going to say I want to remove that geometry. There it is. See what we come up with. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. One thing I have noticed is as it's trying to recreate geometry, there is this little kill button down here. Essentially, as it's working, because it is creating quite a bit of geometry, as it's working, if you go ahead and kill this, I guess this is maybe a good time to do that. There it is. That it will actually stop what it's doing, so you can get rid of that. Maybe we should try our remove on a little bit different feature here. Our next one, maybe that's taking a little while to regenerate, but I'll show it to you. But that little X button down at the bottom there actually stops the process and allows you to hop back in and keep going, right? Because sometimes it can take a little while to get through that. Right? So I guess because of that, that's a good thing to show you. Okay. Now, we know as far as from a removal or an editing of round standpoint, from a parametric concept, you find your round and edit it. But let's do this in a little bit different situation, something where we don't necessarily know value or there are no features involved with it. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and open up an IGES, or essentially in this case a step file, or maybe it is an IGES file. I don't remember. There it is. Let's go ahead and open up that guy right there. It is, again, an import object. There we are. Okay. And again, fairly straightforward. I get that. I know it's not overly complicated, but it gets the point across when we're doing some of this stuff. Is that, again, get into the flexible modeling button, and at this point in time, let's go ahead and do it remove now. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and pick this round. There it is. I'm going to say, give me all those rounds. Notice how it didn't pick those up. Again, we could manually pick those just by holding the control button. But I'm going to say, I want to remove those objects. Notice what it creates. See how it gets rid of that round? Right? There's it gets rid of the round. I say, give me the check mark, and I just remove the round. What does it give me in the model tree? See how it gives me a nice remove feature. And again, if I wanted to back up out of, I just pick it, say delete, and then go from there. Right? Now, what if we want to edit the round? What if I want to change that round? I can change that round. Again, pick this round right here. We'll say we want all those rounds. And at this point in time, there's an edit the round feature, or function, I should say, not necessarily feature. And again, I could go in and drag these, right? Drag it back and forth if I wanted to. Type in a specific value. There it is. Say OK. There it is. And now, again, what have I done? Something that everybody's, if you try to manipulate, I just stated before, it's fairly impressive. Notice how I went in and said, all right, I'm going to alter the geometry. I just modified, or essentially, or step file, I think in this case, I've altered that geometry, which everybody knows you just really can't do unless you're using something like flexible modeling, okay? Let's kind of look and see how geometry adapts in certain cases. So again, pick the surface. I'm going to use the entire boss. In this case, let's kind of use the dimension. I'm going to say from this surface to that surface. Notice how, again, there's the dimension. Notice how it also drags along. Let's see what happens when it encounters an edge. See that? See how it pushes that? So it's, even though we talk about it's not creating geometry, it is altering the geometry, right, in this case. So now it pushes down to the edge. I have a specific value that I can type in, and then when I'm done, I go ahead and hit my check mark button, and you can see that. Again, if I didn't want to do that, I just go back and pick my my move feature and delete it that way also. Okay. All right. So fundamentally, right, we've kind of covered most of the functions here. I'm going to do a substitute in just a second, but that really is what the flexible modeling tool is. Now, one thing that we didn't cover is this pattern, and I don't know if I have a good situation for this, but let's go look at this. Let's say, for instance, and we have to kind of pretend here, but let's say that in the that this is an IGES file, so we don't have any patterns, right? We don't have any of this stuff. You see this pattern right here. What I have the ability to do is, if these were, again, were just IGES data, I can pick these guys right here. Once I pick it, I can say I want to recognize a pattern. And what it will do is recognize these objects out of pattern, and then at that point in time, just kind of like we did with the symmetry, if I alter this guy, this feature right here, or this piece of geometry, that as I make those changes, that again the pattern recognition will pick them up, and then they would alter all, I should say the rest of these four right here, just like we saw within the concept of the symmetry. Okay, so again, I don't a pattern, but it works very similar to the way that it does within the symmetry concept. Okay. All right. One other thing that we'll do here. Okay. We'll open. It's kind of cool. And actually, you've seen, if you work with some surfacing stuff, you might have seen this every once in a while. But it's the concept of substitute. All right. There has been a replace tool within Creo for quite a while here. But essentially, in the flexible modeling, there's something very similar called substitute. Right, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the surface that I want to substitute, and then I'm going to pick the surface that I want to substitute it with. There it is. Again, let it work. Hopefully we can get done with this one. There it is. Now, what's cool about this is that notice how it recreated all the rounds. If I were to do this with the regular replace tool, it would just cut it off. I'd have square edges, not only here, but at the holes themselves. But I think that's actually pretty powerful, right? All I have is just a regular Pro E extruded surface. I pick the surface that I want to essentially remove or substitute. I pick the object that I want to substitute it with, and then the end goal, there it is. And I don't have to recreate all of those rounds. If I had cut it off before, I'd have sharp edges. I'd have to put the rounds on. I'd have to rebuild all the rounds here. And again, in this case, it built all those rounds. If I go back and look at this, there it is. Let's see. There it is. Notice how it says recreate round, but create round and chamfer geometry, or fundamentally just recreate them again according to what they were before, right? So there it is. One other thing that I was going to do, let's see if I can get this to work the way I want it to. There it is. All right. If I go over here, notice how when I pick this surface right here, and again, we'll just do a regular move. I'll just do it with the dragger. Notice how when I pull this out, see how, again, it's smart enough to recognize and extend that surface. There are a few other things that you can do here. Excuse me. Let's see. Where can I do that at? Let's see. Extend, attach, move geometry. There's a few buttons here. I can't ever figure out all the buttons that I have here. There is a button here where if I create, is that it? Let's see here. There's one button that I'm looking at. Let's remove that. I think it's this guy right here. It is, maybe not. Here, let's see if we can get this to work. Yeah, okay, let's do that one more time. Move, pick it. There's the extend under the attachment. There it is. There it is. Okay, that. What I'm looking for is there is a button that allows me, instead of extending along a surface, that I actually can stop it at that point in time, and it extends essentially perpendicular to the direction that I have. And again, I can't remember exactly which one it is, but it allows me to do that here. And then again, instead of moving along the surface, it moves perpendicular to that guy right there. Okay. All right. So fairly simple functions and ideas that you see within the flexible modeling tool. We have pretty much covered most of the buttons within the flexible modeling tool and kind of how they work. Again, remove button, the symmetry, the mirror just says the objects are mirrored across the plane, right? As I move one, have one also created on the other side. Moving analytic, if I hit the move analytic button, is very similar. There it is. Notice how I move the hole. Oh, I forgot about this. Notice how when I move the hole, notice how the round updates are essentially moves right along with it. We don't have to recreate that. There's the move analytic. The analytic is based a little bit more off of specific shapes, cones and cones and cylinders. And then again, we covered the offset, and then we covered the move concepts. Okay. Now, the last thing that and this is more of a talk than anything else, but essentially the flexible modeling tool is limited to the complexity of the software, or excuse me, the software, but to the surfaces that it's actually creating at any given time. I have seen some situations where the geometry just can't be constructed because you have a lot of different radiuses coming into a corner and some kind of crazy stuff going on. But that is kind of to be expected, right? What we're trying to do here is get a direct geometry at it, but have that geometry adapt to what is around it. There have been cases that I've seen, and I don't have a good example of it here, that essentially the geometry is so complicated that we're trying to move a few different surfaces that it just won't create. Okay, I've ran through that with a few different customers, and I've kind of showed them the limitations, obviously the benefits, but also limitations of the software, because I think that's also fair to show. Okay, so if you're ever interested in something like this, we as a company, I've always kind of shown that as a demo. Give me a few parts, I'll show you what it can do, I'll show you what it can't do, and it just kind of helps you make a good evaluation on what the software or how the software could benefit you. Okay, all right. So flexible modeling, fairly simple tool, fairly simple functions. We saw just about everything that we needed to see, or at least its capabilities right here. And at this point in time, we would open up to now. The last thing I'll do here is for myself, and then Matt might have a few closing things that he'll put in. There it is. Let's shut some of that stuff down. For whatever reason, my little toolbar won't come up. There we go. All right, so last thing I'll do here, I'll just put my information up here for just a second. Just so if you need to and you'd like to reach out and like to see a little bit more about it, or any technical aspect of it, feel free at any point in time, send me an email so I can check that out. But at this point in time, what I'll do is Matt, do you have any other ending slides or anything else that you'd like to put up at this point in time?
Yeah, I got a couple of things I'm going to go through here, Ben, and kind of give them some more information, and then we'll close it out from there.
Okay, so I can make you the presenter, so there you go. Go ahead.
Alrighty, so obviously usually we'd have a little wrap-up Q&A. We had some technical difficulties last week, so no Q&A this week. Just wanted to also remind you, if you're looking for any of to, I guess, update any of your PTC skills or take them to the next level, we do provide PTC certified training in 8 training facilities. You can browse our training schedule by visiting our events tab on our website at b-wiptc.com. Please feel free to reach out to National Training Manager Joe Farhat directly if you have any training questions. He'll be able to take care of you and your team's training needs. Also, all of our webcasts are archived on our website, b-wi.com, for you to view at a later time. And finally, if you have any questions, you can either send them to myself or Ben and we'll be more than happy to help you out with anything that we can do for you. So please feel free to contact us with any questions or issues that you may be having, and we look forward to helping you out. So that will conclude our webcast today. Thank you everybody for watching, and have a good day. Thank you.